Well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show. And delighted it's that time again. I'm joined by Errol Musk, all the way down in South Africa. How are you doing, Errol?
Well, thank you. Well, thank you.
Good.
And you?
Wonderful stuff. Lovely feedback from a lot of people. People have asked me where did the name Errol come from? Were you named after Errol Flynn?
Yeah, I think so. Probably. My mother would have been very much at the time somebody who was watching the Errol Flynn movies, and it was her genre, you could say. And I'm pretty sure that's who I'm named after.
Did you ever
I'm pretty
ask
sure
her?
of that. Huh? No,
Did you
no, I
ever
never
ask
asked.
her?
No, no, never asked my mother, and but I'm pretty sure that would have, she was right in the middle of it. So I'd have either been called Robert after Robert Taylor, or possibly Humphrey after Humphrey Bogart, or Errol after Errol Flynn. I'm glad it's Errol Flynn because he was the most beautiful of all of them, you know. And today, even, not recently, but I have watched Errol Flynn movies. I mean, they're terrific,
Yeah.
terrific. Captain Blood and Robin Hood and so on. He made much better ones than the more recent ones. And yeah, so yeah,
No, we certainly spoke about that previously, about the power of the old movies, which last for decades,
yeah,
as opposed to what might happen with movies today.
yes, yeah. The old movies are really worth watching, and I'm so glad that many of them have been sort of restored. And you can see really as though it was made recently. Its quality is good and so on. Yes, no, it's a whole package that's out there for people to enjoy.
Yeah.
And of course, many of the older movies, they weren't able to rely on CGI to create thrills and stuff. The actors had to actually create the thrills for you themselves. And so if you look at a movie like Scaramouche, I don't know if you know the movie. I mean, it's you could watch that movie 100 times. It's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary film. And there's no special effects in it, but it's probably one of the best films ever made,
Right.
with Stuart Granger and
Yeah.
Mel Ferrer. You know,
Yeah.
Scaramouche, the man who had to hide his identity as a fool
Right.
in pre-revolutionary France,
Yeah. And
and who
it's
became
it's a good
great
friend of mine
sportsman.
is a chap called John Stevenson, who's the director of Kung Fu Panda. And his early childhood memory was seeing Sinbad. Do you remember the old Sinbad when they used to come up
Yes,
with all
yes, I
these
do.
different things? Extraordinary images.
Yes, yes, yes. I would like to see Scaramouche remade. I don't think they could ever make it as well as the original, ever. I don't know if it seems to me you haven't seen it, but you should go and find it and see it. It's absolutely marvelous.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the old movies have a lot for people still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're right. The days before we had special effects, things like King Kong, where he was only like 18 inches high or something.
Yeah, yeah, no, true. But again, a lot of you talk about King Kong. All right, that's a sort of fantasy. Whereas if you take Scaramouche or many of the other movies made by Errol Flynn and so on, they were not fantasies. They were things that real people could do. It wasn't as though, oh, that could never. It was real. You could actually imagine it as having really happened. And whereas if you start going into the fantasy world of apes that are high as a building and so on, a tall building and so on. I mean, it's fantasy. So the movies, they did make the early version of King Kong, obviously, but no, a lot of the movies, the older movies. I'm speaking as an old person, I suppose. The older movies have a story to them, where
Yeah.
it's actually worth listening, and there's a lesson in the story. And instead of um, today's movies, where I was at a cinema outlet a while back, and somebody said to me, "Do you see there's 9 movies on show here today? Because they have all these little cinemas now." And and this chap said to me, "Do you notice that in 7 of the posters advertising the films, a man is holding a gun or a machine gun,
Yes.
a gun or a machine gun?" So you've got 9 movies showing. 7 of them have got a man holding a machine gun or a gun and pointing it. So that's, in a way, odd, because it's not mirroring real life. It's not a mirror on real life. Uh, you know, so in a way, I also I do subscribe to the idea that if you go to see movies like that, it takes away or drains or satisfies your primal urges, and so you go and see it in a movie, and then you don't need to reenact anything in real life,
Well, it was your advice to Tosca and with her early movie, wasn't it? When she basically had two people who lost money on the dot-com boom and set up a coffee shop, and you said it was not a very good movie, and they should have had a man in a cupboard with a knife.
Yes, I said, she made this film about two girls. One girl had lost her investment in a dot-com business, and she was very unhappy. And her friend came along and said, "Why don't we drop all this dot-com stuff and open a coffee shop?" And so that they then find the premises, and then they decorate it with their friends, and they paint it and put up this and that and the other, and lights and so on, and make up, build a counter and so forth. And then they have a big opening day, and everybody comes, and it's a big success. The end. And I said to him, and Elon said, "That's unwatchable, Dad. It's unwatchable." And but Elon and Kimball had paid $250,000 each for that to be made, so they had proper actors and everything. Yeah. But bless her heart, I mean, Tosca thought it was marvelous, and so why not? But I said to her, if you just introduced in the beginning where the two girls are sort of lounging about in the bedroom, talking about things and what to do, and the one came up with the idea of a coffee shop. If you just panned over to the cupboard, the clothes cupboard, with that slats in it, and you went in there, and there's this deep breathing, and there's a guy in there, a raincoat, and he's holding a 9-inch knife or 10-inch knife or something. And, I said, then you'd have everybody going, "Ooh, I need, ooh, stop the presses. Keep quiet, everybody. You're watching this movie, because that's the sort of thing that, I said that would, and Tosca said to me, "Don't be ridiculous, Dad." Tosca went on, of course, to make rom-coms. So she's never, ever entered into the world of, mystery and murder and stuff. Her rom-coms are all about, when Sally meets Harry or whatever the thing is.
Oh, it's a big market, massive, and
yes,
her company is done phenomenally well.
She's made hundreds of, I think she's made well over 100 full-length movies, and she's often the director, and she has huge studios and everything in Atlanta, and they make a movie about every 6 weeks to 3 months. They make a new movie, and you can subscribe to it. It's like Netflix. It's not that expensive. It's about $5 a month, and you can watch these passion flick shows. Yeah, so you've got to hand it to her. I mean,
phenomenal. Brilliant. No, absolutely. But you're right. I mean, things like Scaramouche, 1952, I think it was, and a phenomenal sort of cast and that sort of stuff. And a lot of it with the actors, Stuart, Granger and Janet Leigh, and seeing that sort of wonderful chemistry on screen was fantastic, wasn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, because the actors were so real, you actually would have never, if you saw them in real life, you'd say, "Where's your sword?" Or, I mean, "I saw you. Oh, you Scaramouche, aren't you?" You know what I mean? I mean, or you saw, the acting was so real, and they had to do that because there wasn't, there was no way of like making big explosions and stuff that, would like shake everybody. They had to actually perform as though, and in fact, you could probably have put Scaramouche on a stage, as a stage production, and it would have been just as good. And they had to, and of course, as you go further back, I don't really go that much further back, but if you do go further back to some of the early movies, that some of them are not as good. They haven't been restored as well, but anyway, they're not too bad with Frederick March and people like that. They had very little. They had very, I no doubt, very poor. I mean, sound only came in 1929, so they had very poor sound. They really had to struggle. They didn't have little microphones stuck to their, to one of their beads and things like that. They would have had to say loudly, in order for the cameras, or rather the microphones, to pick them up, speak loudly, and it's a little wooden, but at the end of the day, they had to act that thing out to the extent that you would believe it. And then you take Charlie Chaplin. I mean, no sound at all.
Yes.
and people rushing to go and see what Charlie Chaplin's doing.
And it's incredible. And the way that talent had to evolve as well, because they're famous movies where people sort of turn around and they might look incredibly beautiful on screen until they open their mouth.
Well, yes. I mean, I often look at modern women and think how beautiful they are, because beauty has taken a wonderful turn with all the things available to women to enhance their looks. But and then sometimes you look at the women who in movies long ago with their funny little hats and stuff. But occasionally, recently, I've taken a look at some of the earlier movie stars like Myrna Loy, for example,
Yes.
who passed away recently at 101 or something. And then you realize if they had today's sort of advantages, how stunningly beautiful they would have been. Unfortunately, they didn't. They were stuck with what was available in the 20s or the 30s, But yeah, so
they should take advice from Quincy Jones.
Yes, what's that?
Oh well, the special thing that he tells you to take every day.
Oh, ginkgo biloba. No, he says you must take ginkgo biloba. You must take it every day. In fact, I must go and get some more. And I've done it ever since he told me. And that's explained to me why he looked like he was 50 at 78. At the most 50. Yeah. He looked 50 at 78. Yeah. And he's got a lot of kids and everything, and he's pretty much like us in that respect. Yeah, he's a very healthy, solid guy.
Yeah.
And so you're right. Yeah,
it's quite, but it's natural. I think, there's a lot of people now, they're being forced to look younger and have the body enhanced, not just with technology, but with puffed out lips, those sort of trout pouts and things like that. What's your take on plastic surgery?
No, I think if you need, I've seen, it's done wonders for people, in America, I have quite a lot of Persian friends or Iranians, from Persia. And these people are wonderful. They're lovely people. And, it sort of flies in the face of what we read about the mullahs and all that sort of stuff in whatever they are in Iran being such horrible types. But the Persians that I've met in America, really all in America, are probably the nicest people, some of the nicest people I've ever met. And their daughters have hair that is like horse's mane, black and thick. I mean, you could basically cut off their hair and tow a car with it, quite easily, roll it up and tow a car. Anyway, and many of the girls, touchy sort of subject, they had sort of huge noses, really huge noses. Some of them, even with the sort of huge nose, were absolutely drop dead gorgeous, no matter. But nearly all of them that I know there have gone for the nose job, you see. And following the nose job, they become unearthly beautiful, almost unearthly beautiful. You can't believe it. It's just too beautiful for words. And so there is a place for, and I don't see anything wrong with that. I think you should attend to that kind of thing. If your child is born with, flappers for ears, don't give him the problem of having to spend his life defending his ears, Have them fixed, for God's sake. People are not apes, and so we're not really apes, and so we don't need that. And I had a friend once, a lovely friend, very, very smart man, and his ears stood out vertically to his side of his head, and but he was very good looking otherwise. And when he became an adult, he had it sorted out, you see. But anyway, when we were still teenagers, his father was much better off than mine. And his father took us to town to buy him a moped, what we called a moped, a motorbike. And he was still at school, but he was 16, so he could ride this moped, a lovely brand new moped. So we went to this place that was selling these things called puch mopeds, you see. And the salesman said to my friend, my 16-year-old friend said to the salesman, how fast can it go? Something like that. And of course, with his dad standing there, and the salesman said, this thing goes so fast that those ears of yours will be pinned to the side of your head. Well, it took us literally 3 seconds to vacate those premises.
It is.
The father and son
I was going to say that, but there's a
and they were out of
difference
there in
between
3
somebody who's
seconds.
got something which is maybe not normal in terms of that sort of stuff, and
No, don't
somebody
do
who
that.
wants to accentuate their sort of pout lips, or they do this. Would you ever
Oh, no,
have
no.
plastic
Yes.
surgery?
Anyway, I must just finish that story. So we
Yes.
went to the competitors, and he bought a moped cash, you know. But I agree that it's wrong, that people should see these sort of things and sort them out. I mean, you know, there's a limit, of course. But when you talk about women puffing up their lips and also, you know, actually they start to look like monsters. And I don't think anybody tells them. I think as women are very, what do you call it, are very co-dependent on each other and sort of very supportive of each other. So one woman will have this done and the other woman's not going to tell her, you shouldn't have done this. She's going to say, oh, you look terrific, you know, and so on. And then instead of saying, no, that you made a mistake, have this fixed or reverse it or something.
And that's the problem, because it's not rather like tattoos. People will have they have one and they have several more afterwards. And I think the same with plastic surgery. Would you ever have plastic surgery?
Well, yes, you know, I never used to have this face. I got this off a corpse.
Is that
right? Sometimes when I look in the mirror lately, I think, did I get this off a corpse? Anyway, no, I haven't had any plastic surgery, but I wouldn't mind going to have my eyes and not look older, try and make myself look a bit younger. But yeah, I wouldn't mind, but I wouldn't know where to go, really. You know, and of course, men are not supposed to think about things like that. And I do say, I have said to my lady, you know, should I have my eyes fixed, you know, tightened up a bit? And she said, why? And, you know, I don't know if she's just being nice or, you know, in her head saying, please do it, you know, or something. I don't know. But no, there's definitely a place for plastic surgery. Definitely.
And any of your family members have had plastic surgery?
I think a lot of the women have had breast implants, you know. I don't think that's, but it's very important to women. I don't think men are concerned about it, to be honest with you. I don't think men give it a thought. I certainly don't give it a thought. I know my friends don't give it a thought. But for women to look womanly is quite important to them. And I think women do it for their own sake and for what they look like to other women. And so they have done that. I can't think of anything else. They've had skin, like where they peel your skin off or something like that.
Right.
Something like that on the face or something. I forget what it's called. But otherwise, no, we haven't had the need to do that particularly. No. We've been fortunate. You know, we haven't had to do anything that I know of anyway,
Right.
But
it's obviously been done very well if you don't know about it. So it's good.
There's not a man or woman walking around who's over 60 or something, or, you know, who, if you said to them, come, we can give you your looks that you had when you were 30, would say no. I mean, so are you sure? Yes. Okay, right. How much is it? Doesn't matter. I'll pay for it.
But talking about
we've all become aware of the fact that you may not look quite right after the plastic surgery.
I say that's the problem when people get too far with it. But you seem to have good genes, but not just sort of physically, but also intellectually. I mean, you look at, we were talking about the family beforehand. I mean, a cousin of Elon and the other people, Lyndon Reeve, the entrepreneur, co-founder of Solar City. Are you close to him as well?
Well, I know Lyndon. Lyndon is May's sister's son, and they started. Elon set them up to start Solar City, and it was a moderate success. It was not, in fact, a success, Solar City, until Tesla took it over and turned it into a more stable producer of solar panels, which were not dependent on having to sell to commercial outlets on the basis that if you put in these solar panels, we guarantee that your electricity bills will be lower. That was Solar City's plan. And it didn't work too well at all. And so, yeah, Elon has given them the chance to become wealthy men, and he said they certainly have become wealthy. They're not, they're not the cousins that he have. They didn't go to universities or anything like that. They're simply schoolboys, school leavers, and they're not in the same, quite in the same, in my opinion, quite in the same category, you know. And but on the other hand, the other cousins, my brothers, I sound like I'm saying things that I'm being, you know, one-sided or something. No, I'm not. I'm actually giving the facts. My brother's sons, on the other hand, you know, the two highest-ranking matriculants in the history of South Africa, with 12 A levels each, and they, which is, I don't know how you do that. I have no idea how you do that. You know, I had 5 A levels. I simply don't know how you even do that. I no idea how you do that. And they work for him now at, and they run X.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Elon is very grateful for having them.
James and Andrew, those two.
James and Andrew, yes. Yeah. An interesting story is, you know, when they first arrived, having finished their studies and stuff, I mean, these two are like walking computers. But anyway, that's why I said earlier on another program, it's difficult being in their company because I don't understand half the time what they're talking about. You know, they live in a virtual world of computers. But anyway, so when they were first sent to San Francisco, Elon had bought an estate just outside of San Francisco, which consisted of an old house, huge house, with something like, I'm not sure if I'm completely right, but 180 rooms, bedrooms or rooms or something. It was like huge, on 240 acres. And he bought this estate outside of San Francisco. I don't know what he had in mind, but he bought this estate. It probably came up, I don't know if it came up at a good price or something, but the house had been built at the turn of the last century by, you know, those old houses that were built by the billionaires of 120 years ago. And anyway, Andrew was sent to stay there, and he was the only person in this place. And my brother phoned me and said, James is in the in this place, and he's terrified out of his mind. He was only, you know, he was only about 27, and he's terrified out of his mind. He can't go to the toilet without staying on the cell phone with me. That's talking to my brother in South Africa. He's so frightened in this place that he's terrified out of his mind. He's the only person in this huge building. And, you know, it's quite funny, actually, you know.
Well,
and
it
so they
sounds fresh out of The Shining, doesn't it, with Jack Nicholson?
Yeah, it's like out of The Shining. And they whipped him out of there quickly because he was so frightened.
Right.
And my brother knows the whole story. But my brother was saying, you know, that he would phone, his son would phone him, James would phone him and say, Dad, I want to go. The toilets were obviously not en suite, you see. I need to go to the toilet now. And so I need to talk to you all the way to the toilet in this building, you see, keeping his father on the phone, you see. So it's quite funny, really. Yeah. And anyway, so James has went on to Twitter, where he turned it into X, and he was the one who Elon used to thin out the staff. So Elon took the flak for it, but James was the one who decided who was necessary and who wasn't.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a tough job, but as you say, somebody else has to sort of front that. And it's very interesting, the relationship that you have with your children. Did you have the same sort of relationship with Walter Henry J. Musk, your father, and your mother, or do you think it's a very different relationship?
Oh, no. My mother was a very, very hands-on individual. So when May and I split up, my mother took over more or less as Elon and Kimball's mother. She was a sort of, you know, replacement mother, because they stayed with me. I was forever traveling around to buildings and mines and factories all over the country. So she would fill in and see that they had everything. We used to have quite a lot of servants. That helped a lot. And she would see to their clothing and their, you know, their school uniforms and all that sort of stuff, and fill in for me. So that was a very big help. So my mother was very hands-on. My father was not a person who spoke too much at all, you know. If I were to phone, you know, we were talking about this a while back, you know, if I were to phone my parents home on the old telephone, you know, and my father would have answered the phone, I would have said, hi, it's hello. He would say, oh, hi, you want your mum? And then I'd say, the joke was that if you didn't really, it's like people say to me, do you talk a lot with Elon? And I say, no, it's a lot like it was with my father. You know, I don't have Elon phoning me and saying, how are you today, Dad? You know, if he did, I'd think, what does he know? You know, what does he know that I don't know? So if I phoned my home and my father answered the phone and I said to him, so how was your week, Dad? He'd have said, what? I'd say, how was your week, Dad? He'd say, you want to speak to your mother? And then I'd say, yes. Then he'd say, I'll call him. So there was no, how I love you, Dad. I mean, you know, hello. If I did say, how was your week, Dad, to my dad, or I just want you to know I'm thinking of you, he would have said to me, what have you done? He would have said, what have you done?
Right.
What sort of trouble are you in? You know, did you have an accident? You know, that's what he would have done.
Yeah.
Because why on earth would I be talking to him like that? Why would I be buttering him up? There must be something I'm going to tell him. Yeah. You know. And,
it is interesting. I always say, Errol, that you only learn about how much your parents do for you when you become a parent yourself. And did it change your attitude once you became a parent yourself to your own parents?
Yes, I tried to be much more hands-on than my father, and I was, and very interactive with my children. My father, you must remember, came from a different generation that had lived through the 30s. He was a teenager during the Great Depression. You know, everything was lousy, and then they went to war for 6 years. You know, I mean, my father, Elon has actually said when he's been asked about my father, Elon's actually said, oh, he never ever said anything, but this is Elon speaking.
Yeah.
Oh, my granddad never ever said anything, but he was very good at crosswords.
Oh,
that was Elon's word. He was very good at crosswords. So my dad could do the Sunday Times crossword in about 10 minutes.
Right.
I mean, he was really good. And that's what you had to be able to do when you came out of the cyber schools, you know, or in order to get into the cyber schools, I think you had to know how to do, they tested you on things like, crosswords and similar things, you know, your mind and your ability to think and so on. So my father could do the crossword of the Sunday Times in about 10 minutes. So he won the £5 prize. That £5 was a huge amount of money at that time. He won that twice from the newspaper, the local Sunday Times that we had here, similar to yours.
Yes.
He won that twice. And it was considered an impossibly difficult crossword puzzle, but he was extremely good at it. And Elon is on record as saying, well, he never said anything, but he was really good at crossword puzzles.
and on the other side, on May's side, it was Joshua Norman Haldeman, wasn't it? Explorer and political activist, and Win Fletcher. How did he get on with them?
Oh, they were amazing people, really amazing people. In reality, he was a far right, really a far rightist in Canada, you know, and I suppose they didn't know really what was going on in Nazi Germany. So they were Hitler sympathizers. You know, they sympathized with Germany, much like the Afrikaans people in South Africa were great sympathizers. In fact, John Vorster, who later became Prime Minister of South Africa, he was interned for 6 years, and so was many others, because they were viewed as German sympathizers. And so May's father was also, and he actually left Canada when the Afrikaans group took over the government in 1948 in South Africa, and hands down won the election and turned South Africa into, what became the apartheid state, the Afrikaner apartheid state. He actually came to South Africa specifically for that reason, to join people with whom he had the same outlook. And that's why he came to South Africa. You don't get Canadians in general or Americans immigrating to South Africa. It's somewhat unusual. Certainly they did come, a lot of them came from Europe and stuff after the war, but during the 50s, it was unusual. So when they came here in 1950 or so, they were unusual, but they came because they supported the South African government.
Right.
And but they were interesting people. He was a very good pilot. He was killed in an air crash in a small plane. And he did what a lot of the pilots were doing in those days, because you were able to do it, fly up and down Africa, because the whole of Africa was a colonial state. There were various colonial states, and everything was very organized and in order. You could land and you could get fuel, and it was well looked after. You didn't have to worry. In my time, when I started flying up in Africa, there were areas where you had to avoid because you might be shot down by a surface air missile. And so and everything had fell to pieces. You couldn't really get fuel anymore everywhere. You could get it in certain places, certain countries, but other countries you couldn't get it. And so it wasn't safe in my time when I did flying up in Africa. But fortunately for them, they were able to go up and down in Africa many times. And you have to give them credit for that. And he was quite an adventurer. He didn't speak much. He was also like that generation of my father. You didn't really get much out of him conversation-wise. And although him and I would often work together, I bought an airplane around the time I married May. I was very young. I bought this plane we didn't have furniture really, but we had a decent furniture, but we had an airplane. And I bought this plane, this tri-pacer. And him and I would spend hours working on the planes in silence, more or less, fixing something. He never spoke much. Very stoic sort of guy. Never spoke much, but when he did say something, it was usually worth listening to.
Something profound.
Wonderful. And the mother, Win, was an extraordinary woman, a woman of great depth. And if you looked at her physically, she clearly, having come from generations in Canada, there must have been a red Indian influence there, because she had very high cheekbones, which passed on to May, of people. Of the indigenous people,
right?
But she was a very deep person, and kind and helpful in many ways,
Yeah. And so you got on well with both of them.
Oh yes, I did. We had our fights. They were, unfortunately, they were full supporters of apartheid, and at the time, things were changing in South Africa, and I would try to explain to them. Because I went on to the council, and the council was 100% apartheid supporting, except me. So not that I was just one person, but the newspapers would appeal to me all the time. Particularly the English language newspapers, they could get something out of me, because they could get nothing out of the rest of the council. Right. They could get it out of me because I didn't mind speaking to them. And if they spoke to any other of the Afrikaans councillors, there were 29 other councillors. They thought as one person, so they would never give an opinion, without consulting with the whole group of them, sort of thing. Where I didn't have that problem. So the newspapers always got an opinion out of me, So I was in the newspaper every second day, first page, second page, third page, first page, second page, third page. And it got so much so that May's parents started getting upset with me, and they stopped their subscription to the newspaper.
Oh, is that right? Good.
They didn't want the newspaper anymore. And so we started having, I would try to be nice, and say to them, look, things are changing,
Yeah. And
they'd say, no. They took the sort of, like, they're much wiser than me. And they probably were, no, they'd say to me with their American accents, this is the way it's got to be, and this is how people are, and they like try and push that side of things, which is a very solid argument in some respects, and they explain that putting two people of one highly capable person with a person who's not very capable doesn't bring up the less capable person; it brings down the capable person, and so on. And I would say, yes, but we really can't do this anymore, and all that sort of stuff. And then they would pick me out about things I had been reported as saying to the newspapers, who would sometimes take a lot of liberty with something I'd said. And, they'd say, Errol Musk, I was in my 20s, mind you. Errol Musk supports opening of all the city parks to all races. Now, black people weren't allowed to use the city parks in Pretoria because the feeling was that they weren't litter conscious, and they weren't. I'm speaking as an engineer now. Don't help me. I'm not racist, they were thinking, I suppose, in terms of not littering the parks or not having people walk on the flowers and stuff like that, you see. Anyway, and then the newspapers would ask me, and I'd say, well, I think they should be open between the hours of 8. I remember saying between the hours of 8 and 6 every day.
Right.
The park should be open to everyone. And then, of course, the newspapers would have a glaring headline: Errol Musk says all the parks should be open all the time to all races. And then, of course, May's parents would say to me, that's stupid, you know, I'm being stupid.
Yeah.
And I said, no, you have to understand things are going to change.
Yeah.
And of course,
and it's so interesting, Errol, because as you say, politics can divide families. You talked about Trump.
So that divided us. That divided us.
Yeah.
To the point that at one point I said, look, I can't do this anymore. I'm funny in that respect. I get to a point and I said, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I said to May, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be going. I mean, I loved her, but I didn't want to. I sort of, in my childish youth, I said, I'm not seeing you anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not coming here anymore. Yeah. And so I left her, and we split up for a few months, only to get back together and get married within 2 months.
Well, there you go.
And so
the joys of politics and religion in families. It's like those things you never talk about at dinner parties. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be doing a deeper dive. But for now, Errol Musk, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.